My family forgot about my graduation ceremony and texted, "We thought you'd be too busy to care." I just said, "Cool," and went alone. The day after, when they asked for a ride to a wedding. I've spent my whole life trying to be enough for my family. You'd think after all these years, I'd have learned that it was never going to happen, but still, I kept trying. The whole thing had started innocently enough. I was just a kid, eager to fit in, to be seen. But growing up with my father, Leon, and my mother, June, made that nearly impossible. They were the kind of parents who didn't really understand the idea of showing up. Leon, in particular, always had his own interests: golf, work, a couple of other hobbies I never really paid attention to. And June? She was distant. I'm not saying she didn't love us, but she never really knew how to show it. I don't think I ever heard her say she was proud of me. My siblings, Adam and Julia, were a lot more capable in their eyes. Adam had always been the golden boy, good at everything, confident, popular. Julia, a couple of years older than me, was also someone who didn't need anyone's approval to feel good about herself. Both of them had their lives already figured out when I was still stumbling through mine. When I graduated high school, I chose to go to a local university. It wasn't the ideal choice, but I wasn't exactly rolling in options either. I wanted to make something of myself. I wanted to show my parents that I could do this. But as I walked across that stage, I could already sense that they weren't invested. The feeling of them not caring lingered. Still, I pushed through. I worked hard, did everything I could to make sure I didn't disappoint myself. I even picked a career path that felt safe and practical, hoping it would impress them. But I always knew in the back of my mind that no matter what I did, I was just never going to be the kind of child they could rave about to their friends. Graduation day finally came. It was my moment. And yet, I found myself staring at my phone on the night before, still hoping. I sent the text to my family, "Just a heads up, my graduation is tomorrow. I'd love for you to be there if you can." The message sat there, unread for hours. At first, I thought they just hadn't seen it. Then I started to wonder if they'd just ignored it. I'd been waiting all day to hear something, anything, from them. After a while, the realization sank in, they probably weren't coming. And yet, I couldn't help but hold on to that sliver of hope. Finally, the text came through. My mom's message: "We thought you'd be too busy to care." I stared at it for a while, rereading it over and over, trying to make sense of it. We thought you'd be too busy to care. I wasn't mad, not really. Hurt, definitely. But not angry. The problem was I didn't know what I was supposed to expect anymore. After all, I'd never really gotten much attention for anything important in my life, so why should this be any different? But still, it stung. It really did. I stared at the message for another few minutes, trying to decide what to say. "Cool," was all I could manage to send back. The thing is, I wasn't trying to be sarcastic or passive-aggressive. It was just the only word that seemed to fit. Cool summed it up. I wasn't surprised. But the emptiness I felt was still there, a quiet ache that refused to go away. I went to my graduation alone the next day. I drove myself, parked by the stadium, and walked into the ceremony with my head held high, though on the inside, I felt a little lost. I didn't have my parents there to cheer me on, no siblings to wave from the crowd. It was just me, a quiet kid who had fought through a lot of things alone, finally crossing a finish line they couldn't care less about. I walked across the stage, my name called over the loudspeaker, and I took my diploma. No applause from my family, no cheers, no balloons. Just the cold reality of what it had always been, me, doing everything alone. The next day, when I thought I had come to terms with it, the message came in. From my mom. "Hey, can you give us a ride to the wedding tomorrow? You know the Smith wedding? It's a big family thing, and Adam's car broke down." I didn't even respond right away. I just sat there, phone in hand, my heart pounding with the sudden frustration of it all. A wedding? Seriously? After everything, after being forgotten on the most important day of my life, they were now asking for a favor. They needed me. But there was no apology. No acknowledgement of what had just happened. It was like my graduation was some insignificant detail that they couldn't even bother to remember. I debated for a while. I could have said no. I could have told them that I wasn't their personal chauffeur. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that they thought it was okay to ask. They thought I would just do it, because, well, they were family. Because they always took me for granted. Finally, I texted back, cool. Not the cool I had sent earlier, not the sarcastic resignation. This cool was cold. Detached. It was my way of saying, I'm done trying to please you. I didn't wait for a response. I grabbed my keys, drove to a local park, and spent the afternoon there. It wasn't the escape I had hoped for, but it was a moment of quiet solitude. I had already given up on my family. What more could they take from me? As the evening rolled around, I could feel the weight of their absence, the gaping hole where their love and support should have been. I was trying to tell myself it didn't matter, that I was strong enough to do this on my own, but deep down, I still felt the sting. And then the next morning, as I was about to go out for a walk, I saw them, my family, all gathered at the house, waiting for me. They were ready for me to take them to that wedding, as if nothing had happened the day before. I stood there for a moment, staring at them, my hand on the door, feeling the full weight of their disregard. I was used to it, sure. But this time, something in me snapped. Actually, I said, as I turned around to face them, I'm not going to take you. They all stared at me, confused. Julia, always the more vocal one, raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? We need to go to the wedding. I shook my head, trying to hold back the emotion rising in me. No, you don't. You never needed me before, so why now? They didn't get it. They never did. And that, in that moment, was all I needed to know. I stood there, letting the silence fill the room. Julia opened her mouth to say something, but I didn't let her. You didn't even show up to my graduation. And now you want me to be your driver? I said, my voice shaking just a little. I don't think so. You'll figure it out. And with that, I walked away. It was the first time I'd ever stood up for myself. The first time I'd refused to accept their apathy. It didn't fix anything, but it felt like a small victory. Now, I'm left wondering if they'll ever get it. But honestly, I don't think I care anymore. As I walked away, the sound of their surprised voices calling after me faded behind me. I could feel the weight of their gazes on my back, but I didn't turn around. I didn't have the strength to face them, not yet. They could try to guilt me, try to make me feel like I was the unreasonable one, but I wasn't buying it anymore. Not this time. I didn't know what I was expecting, an apology? A realization from them that maybe they had been wrong? Honestly, I don't think I was waiting for anything from them anymore. I had gotten used to their indifference, the way they only noticed me when it was convenient for them. For so long, I had bent over backwards trying to fit into their world, trying to get them to notice me, to care. But now, it felt like I was finally seeing things clearly. The only person who ever truly had my back was me. That evening, I went out for a walk, just to clear my mind. I didn't even know where I was going, but I didn't need a destination. The air was cool, the streets were quiet, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Alone, but not lonely. It was a strange feeling. One I wasn't used to, but one I was starting to embrace. The next day, I didn't hear from anyone in the family. Not a single text, not a call, nothing. Part of me expected them to reach out, to try and fix things, but I also knew better. They wouldn't. I was just a background character in their lives, something that was easy to forget when I wasn't directly in front of them. And that was fine, really. I had stopped being surprised by their behavior a long time ago. It was then that I realized how much I had internalized their neglect over the years. I had carried it with me, letting it define my self-worth, letting it color the way I saw myself. I had always felt like I needed them to love me, to show up for me, as though that would validate all the work I had done. But when they didn't show up for me on my graduation day, the one day I had truly hoped they might, I finally realized that their love wasn't something I could control. And maybe it was time to stop trying. The silence between us stretched on for days. I didn't reach out. I didn't feel the need to. I kept thinking about how I had spent years, even decades, justifying their behavior. Always finding excuses for why they were the way they were. But deep down, I knew I couldn't keep making those excuses. They weren't going to change, not unless they wanted to. And I wasn't about to wait around for something that was never going to happen. Then, after nearly a week of radio silence, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Julia. "Hey, I just wanted to apologize for the way things went down last week. We were all in the wrong. It's not an excuse, but things have been stressful with work and everything. I know I should have been there for you. I'm sorry." I stared at the message for a while, unsure of how to respond. I wasn't angry, but I wasn't ready to forgive them either. This wasn't the first time they had let me down, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. I didn't want to close the door entirely, but I also wasn't sure if I could trust them anymore. I didn't want to play the game of waiting for more apologies that would never come, or worse, the empty promises of things changing. So, I just replied, "Thanks for the apology." It wasn't much, but it was honest. I wasn't ready to open up to her or anyone else in the family. Not yet. Maybe someday. Maybe when I felt like they actually deserved it. The next few days passed without much drama. I kept to myself, focusing on my new life, my career, and the freedom that had come from cutting ties with the idea that my family's approval was necessary for my happiness. I had always assumed that their opinion of me mattered most. But now, I was starting to realize that it was my own opinion of myself that was the only thing that truly mattered. And yet, there were moments when I found myself thinking about them, wondering if they had really meant their apology. Maybe they were trying to change. Or maybe they were just saying the right words to make me forgive them and get back to the same old dysfunctional routine. It wasn't until I received another message, this time from my mom, that I realized just how little they had actually learned. "Hi, sweetie. We were hoping you could help us with something. Could you drop us off at the airport? We're flying to visit Aunt Linda next weekend. Adam's car is still acting up, and we don't want to take a cab." I stared at the text, blinking as it sank in. Another request. Another moment where they needed me, but still hadn't truly acknowledged what had happened. They didn't get it. They never did. I didn't know how to respond at first. Part of me wanted to just ignore it, to leave them to figure it out on their own. But another part of me wanted to respond in some way that let them know just how unfair all of this was. How everything between us had always been one-sided. I wanted to tell them I wasn't their personal chauffeur, that I wasn't going to keep being the fallback when things went wrong for them. But instead of responding immediately, I took a moment to think. I needed to be sure that I wasn't acting out of anger, that I wasn't just lashing out because I had been hurt. I wanted to make sure that my decision was based on what I really wanted, not on the frustration I still felt. So I waited. For the first time in a long time, I just sat with the silence, not feeling pressured to act. Maybe that was the real victory here. The ability to pause before responding, to take control over my own emotions. It was something I had never done before. When I finally responded, I simply said, "I'm sorry, but I'm not able to do that." I didn't explain myself. I didn't offer a reason. I just said it. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about it. I wasn't the bad guy for choosing myself over them. I didn't hear from them after that. I didn't need to. The ball was in their court now. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something, a change, an apology, an acknowledgement. I didn't need them to come to me. I was already content on my own. Days passed, and I kept going about my life. My phone stayed quiet, no more desperate pleas for rides or requests for help. The silence wasn't as uncomfortable as I expected it to be. Instead of the usual anxiety that came from waiting for the next demand or inconsiderate comment, I felt calm. Finally, a piece that I hadn't realized I had been missing. The days after I turned down my family's request for the airport ride were marked by an odd sense of liberation. I didn't feel the need to fill the void they left with excuses, guilt, or self-doubt. Instead, I started living for myself. I was going out with friends more, working harder on my career, and exploring things that made me happy, things I never thought I had the time or energy to do because I was always so focused on making them proud. Or at least, trying to. But then, about a week after I turned them down, I got an unexpected call from my mom. It was late afternoon, and I was sitting in my living room, flipping through an old photo album, when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but something about the call made me hesitate. I answered. "Hi, sweetie," my mom's voice crackled through the speaker. "It's me, your mom." I already knew what was coming. A long silence followed, and I waited for her to speak again, already bracing myself for what was probably another half-hearted apology or a roundabout request for help. "I just wanted to check in," she said, sounding almost unsure of herself. "You've been quiet. We've all been worried." "Worried?" I repeated, feeling the weight of the word. "I'm fine, Mom." "Really?" There was another long pause. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I realize I've been distant. I'm sorry. We didn't mean to hurt you. You're our daughter, and we should have been there for you on your graduation. We should have been proud." That was the thing. I had heard all the words before. But this time, something about her tone felt different. It didn't feel as rehearsed. It felt like maybe, just maybe, she was actually realizing something, that her actions had consequences. I didn't say anything for a moment. Part of me wanted to be angry, to call her out on all the years of neglect and indifference. But then I thought about what I really wanted. What I had earned after all these years. "You know, Mom," I began slowly, "I've been doing a lot of thinking too. And I realized something, you and Dad, you've always just expected me to be there when you needed something. But when I needed you, you were never around." She inhaled sharply, and I could almost hear her eyes widen as if she didn't expect me to speak so plainly. But the words were true, and they needed to be said. I wasn't the scared, eager-to-please daughter anymore. I was an adult, and I had a right to speak my truth. "I'm sorry if that's hard to hear," I continued, "but I'm tired of being the backup. The one who's supposed to drop everything and be at your beck and call. I'm not that person anymore." There was a long pause, and I could almost feel her trying to figure out what to say next. But I wasn't going to let her deflect this time. I wasn't waiting for an apology that was merely a formality. I needed her to understand the impact of her actions, even if it meant breaking the quiet illusions we had all built over the years. "Mom," I said, my voice firm but calm, "I've learned that I don't need anyone else's approval to feel good about myself. You and Dad, you may never get it, but I'm okay. I'm doing this on my own, and I don't need to prove anything to you." The line was silent for a moment, and then my mom spoke, quieter now. I didn't realize how much we've hurt you, how much we've taken you for granted." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "It's not about me needing you to apologize. It's about me moving on. I can't keep waiting for something that may never come." She didn't say anything after that. There were no more promises to do better, no more empty assurances that things would change. And honestly, I was okay with that. I had said what I needed to say. And somehow, that felt more empowering than any apology could have. It wasn't long after that conversation that my family's true colors started showing, and it was almost as though everything I had said started sinking in. Or maybe, it was because I had stopped trying to chase their approval that they began to notice me in ways they never had before. It was Julia who reached out first. She sent me a text, asking if I wanted to grab coffee. I agreed, and we met at a cafe near my apartment. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew I needed to set boundaries. I couldn't go back to the old dynamic where I always forgave them, no matter what. This time I was going to hold my ground. Julia was quiet when she sat down, not immediately launching into her usual chatter. She looked different. Maybe a little softer, less confident in her usual smugness. It wasn't the same Julia who always seemed to have her life together. She looked at me, her expression apologetic. I wanted to talk to you about everything, she said, avoiding eye contact for a moment. I know I've let you down. We all have. And I don't expect you to forgive us right away. But I wanted to say, we've all been pretty selfish. I was just so wrapped up in my own stuff that I didn't stop to think about how you felt. I looked at her, seeing for the first time how vulnerable she was. It wasn't what I expected, but it wasn't an apology either. It felt like a genuine realization. I nodded slowly. Thanks for saying that, I replied. But this isn't about me forgiving you or forgetting what's happened. It's about me deciding that I'm not going to keep chasing something that I've never gotten. I can't keep doing that. Julia seemed to take that in, nodding. She didn't argue. Instead, she took a deep breath, as if acknowledging the distance that had grown between us. We talked for a little while longer, and while we didn't come to any deep conclusions, it felt like a moment of real connection, something I had been missing with my family for so long. And for the first time, I didn't feel the pressure to fix everything. It was enough that we had spoken honestly, that we could both see each other as flawed human beings trying to navigate a complicated relationship. The next day, my phone buzzed with a message from my mom. We're proud of you. We may not have been there when you needed us, but we see you. We're sorry. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure how to, and honestly, I didn't need to. The message was enough. My family had started to see me, in their own way. They weren't perfect, and they may never be. But I wasn't waiting for them to change for me anymore. I was fine on my own.